You talk about trauma being something that happens inside of you due to something that happened outside of you. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah, so something happens to you, and then as a result of that, something happens within you. My mother gives me to a stranger. That's what happened to me. But that's not the wound. That's the wounding event. That's the traumatic event. The wound is I conclude that I'm being abandoned, and who gets abandoned? Somebody who's not worthy to be kept, somebody who's not lovable. So the wound is my sense of abandonment. The wound is my sense of not being worthy, not being good enough. And those will show up in powerful ways in how I go through the world as an adult later on. So that's where it's not what happened to me. If my mother could have given me to a stranger, and if I had been capable, which of course I couldn't possibly have been, of understanding, oh, this is to save my life. My mother loves me very much, and this is her desperate attempt to ensure my existence when she couldn't ensure her own, I wouldn't have been traumatized. I would have been disappointed, hurt. Maybe I would have missed her, but I would not have been traumatized. I would not have developed a wound of believing that I wasn't lovable. So trauma then is what happens inside of us. Now, interesting, you mentioned the word hysterical. You know where that comes from?
Yeah, hyster, right? Which is correlated to women.
Hysterectomy is the removal of the uterus. So they used to believe that women who are quote unquote neurotic, their uterus is kind of wandering around. Basically, it's a pejorative against women because you know what it ignores? It ignores the fact that women are traumatized more than men are as children. And so Freud, was the first psychoanalyst, when he first saw clients, they told him that what happened to them was that they'd been sexually abused, and he believed them for a while. And then in polite Viennese late 19th century society, he couldn't maintain that and still be a respectable doctor. So instead, he said that they fantasized having been, because they wanted to have sex with their father, they're fantasized having sex with their father. In other words, they were hysterical. It's basically the word hysterical is a put down of women, which comes from the word uterus. And the actual result is that women who are abused are at much higher rates as children, sexually abused, and we know the physiological impacts when women are when anybody is sexually abused, the men who are sexually abused, they have triple the rate of heart attacks. A recent Danish study that this week actually, that the more adversity in childhood, the greater risk of heart disease, regardless of gender. Women who are sexually abused are at much higher risk for endometriosis and ovarian cancer. The word hysterical kind of trivializes the genuine experience of having been traumatized.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. I guess even the use of the word or the word's existence itself shows you how much we minimize the emotional experience or the traumatic we even give a word that minimizes the traumatic experience and dismisses it completely.
Yeah, and then this is true for on men and women as well. So on the one hand, the word trauma is somewhat overused in the popular culture. People, will talk about, I want to go on a picnic and it rained and I was traumatized. No, you weren't. You were just disappointed. It's not the same thing. As Peter Levine, the great trauma psychologist, says, every traumatic event is stressful, but not every stressful event is traumatic. So on the one hand, we overuse the word, but on the other hand, where it matters in medical practice, the average medical physician does not get a single lecture on trauma and its relationship to mental and physical health. Not a single lecture. They shouldn't have a lecture. They should have a 4-year course on it because everything they deal with in mental health and many areas of physical health are based on childhood trauma, documentably according to the scientific evidence. But they never presented that evidence. So on the one hand, we may overuse the word, but on the other hand, we don't understand it nearly and use it appropriately nearly enough.